Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How DevOps is Bringing Weekends Back. Before we get started, I want to quickly review the pace of the webinar and what you can expect from our presenters today. First off, please know that all attendee lines are muted to control for any background noise. If you have a question at any time, feel free to send it through the chat window located in the control panel. We will have 50 minutes at the end of the webinar for a more formal Q&A session with the presenters. And also keep in mind that the webinar is being recorded and will be made available to you via email within the next few days. For those of you just joining, welcome and thank you for joining us. I'd like to formally introduce our speakers for today. Please welcome Stephen Henderson and Matt Williams. Stephen is a DevOps evangelist at Atlassian. For over 20 years, Stephen has been helping teams to face down software development challenges, embrace software development trends and technology, and get software shipped. Through many roles, including engineer, architect, coach, PM, PMM, and more, he has worked in almost every phase of enterprise and cloud software delivery, from production inception to go-to-market to customer implementation to end-user training. He's worked with some of the world's largest enterprises across many industries, and we're glad to have him here at Atlassian helping to spread the word about DevOps. And we also have Matt Williams, who is a DevOps evangelist at Datadog. He is passionate about the power of monitoring and metrics to make large-scale systems stable and manageable. He tours the country speaking and writing about monitoring with Datadog, and when he's not on the road, he's coding. And with that, I'd like to transition it off to Matt, who will lead this up. Matt, all you.
All right. I have the control. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us. My name is Matt Williams. I am as she said, I'm an evangelist at Datadog. And, oops, wrong button. Wrong button there again. I'm control. There we go. Thank you. So Datadog, who is Datadog? Well, Datadog, we're a SaaS-based infrastructure and application monitoring company. And we have a lot of customers who are sending us a lot of data, and then they're using our interface to see what's going on with their infrastructure. We are bringing in a huge amount of data from all of our customers, on the order of about 1 trillion data points every single day. We provide intelligent alerting, intelligent dashboarding, and hey, if you're you're looking around for something, we are definitely hiring as well. So definitely check out our website, our careers page on our website. Now, the way that we work is we have this open source agent that you load up on each host that you want to monitor, and we start collecting data about what's going on that host. The way we do that is with there we go. The way that we do that is with our integration. So you load up this agent, and then you turn on the integrations that you care about. And so here's just a small subset of all of our integrations. We've got about 200 or so right now. And HipChat and JIRA and Bitbucket are some of the really important ones that we have. But with all of these, it's a matter of going in, entering in maybe an API key or editing a YAML file, and then we start collecting the data that comes from that integration. So we try to make it really, really easy to get started with. I can see. And so we're collecting data, we're collecting metrics. Well, you can kind of think of this like when you're driving a car. When you're driving a car down the road and maybe it's raining really hard, you're relying on the metrics that your car dashboard is showing you. It's not all the metrics of driving. There's certainly a lot of metrics that are not being surfaced to you, but you're definitely paying attention to maybe the speedometer and looking at how fast you're going, and you're probably looking at the lines on the road. They're kind of like a metric. And you're paying attention to, well, when does it start raining? So how slick is the road, and how bald are my tires because I haven't changed them in way too long, which I might have done in the past. But how do you're collecting all these metrics. But again, you're not collecting everything. Your car is probably collecting a lot of other data. If you've got a more recent car, you're collecting a lot of data that maybe the car repairman is going to look at when he tries to fix whatever's wrong with your car. He's going to look at that additional data, those additional metrics that are not being surfaced to you. And that, thank you. And so we're collecting all this data because it's important to figure out what is normal for your car, but also for your infrastructure. What is normal? You want to get a really good understanding of what's normal is for you, so that you know when there's a change, when there's a good change or a bad change, you can see that change because you already know what normal is. And so you can measure, you can look for things that are abnormal and be alerted to those. Now, one thing that we like to say at Datadog is that collecting data is cheap. You should collect as much data as you can. There are, a lot of our customers are collecting on the order of 8,000, 10,000, maybe 20,000 metrics every, they're updating every 15 seconds. Collecting data is cheap. Not having it when you need it can be super expensive. So think about that car driving along. Not having all the data that you need, that your car repairman needs in order to fix the car, means that now you've got to come up with weird noises from your mouth to describe the problem that you're having as you're driving down the street, or trying to have him recreate it as he's driving around the block. And not having it when you need it for your infrastructure means maybe having to recreate that downtime that you just experienced. If you don't have all the data, all the, just trying to recreate that can be really hard to do. Now, the problem with collecting a lot of metrics is that now you've got a lot of metrics, and it's really hard to know what to focus on. If a lot of our, let's say a lot of our customers are collecting upwards of 20,000 metrics every 15 seconds, that's a lot of stuff that you got to process. How do you know what is the most important metric for you? Often I go to speak at different conferences all around the world, and people will ask, well, what are the 5 most important metrics? What's the 5 things I need to focus on, or 10 things I need to focus on to be able to understand what's going on? And there's no way to know what are the 5 most important things to focus on, because it depends on you. It depends on what your business goals are and what your needs are. But you can definitely look at all the metrics that you're collecting and maybe pick out the most important things. And one thing that we've done over the last year, 2 years, is write a lot of blog posts that try to explain how to think about metrics and how to split them up into different groups and how to find what are the most important metrics that you should focus on. So Monitoring 101 it started out as a series of 4 blog posts, 3 of which were applicable to anyone, and 1 is focused more on Datadog. But then we've gone ahead and looked at Redis and Postgres and lots of other applications, and show you how to think about the metrics that are coming from those systems as well. And so again, they're usually in sets of 3 or 4, and one of them is specific to Datadog, but the rest, you could be using any one of our competitors as well. And Monitoring 101 really splits down metrics into 3 major buckets. The first of those 3 major buckets is work metrics. Work metrics are the main thing that you need to focus on. And work metrics, they include things like throughput and success and errors and performance. So throughput, what does that mean? Throughput, in the case of Nginx, could mean number of requests processed every second. And success, well, how many of those requests are 200 respond with a response code of 200? And how many of them are 404s? And it's not so much a scalar value that you care about, but more of a ratio. 10% were success, and 90% were errors. Well, that would probably be pretty bad. So those are the work metrics. Those are the most important things that you need to focus on. The next bucket are the resource metrics. Now, these include utilization, saturation, error, and availability. Now, utilization, that's probably everybody can think of a utilization metric that they've seen, whether you open up Top or HTOP or any of our competitors, or maybe the first time you open up Datadog, you set up a dashboard to look at CPU utilization. Now, on its own, CPU utilization is a completely worthless metric. It doesn't tell you anything. If your machine is running at 5% utilization or 99%, it doesn't tell you anything. It's not until you add it in context with the throughput and success and errors and performance that you really get some value out of utilization. Same goes with saturation. Saturation is basically queue length. How many things are waiting to be processed by that resource? Error and availability are other resource metrics. And the third thing is, third bucket is events. Now, these include the code changes and alerts and scaling events and so forth. And you might think of maybe there's a commit to GitHub or a deploy from Jenkins or GitLab or whoever you're using. You know, these events, they don't really provide much value on their own. Hey, there were 300 commits in Bitbucket, but that doesn't really tell you a lot. But there was a commit to Bitbucket, and just after that, utilization went through the roof, and just after that, throughput went way down and number of errors went way up. Well, there you got a complete story, and you can start trying to troubleshoot what just happened. And so that's about all I wanted to talk about Datadog and kind of the way to think about metrics and the way to think about yeah.
All right. Hi everyone, this is Stephen, and I want to kind of stand on the shoulders of what Matt's been saying, and maybe take you a level deeper into a use case that involves these tools and a few other ideas. See if I can hop to the next slide. There we go. So as has been intimated, there's a lot to track these days. There's so many more systems than ever before. We're being asked to both monitor and take care of the care and feeding of existing systems, and then add even more every year. We're adding services in the cloud. We're adding services perhaps in data centers. We're working with more and more partners perhaps within our industries or across industries to connect these things together. And it creates a lot of coupling and complexity. You may not realize that perhaps the operations folks have moved your software from where it used to live in a data center into the cloud, and now there are new elastic load balancers perhaps in front of your software. Or maybe there are new requirements to maintain security between systems that you may be talking to for payment information or personal information. Regulations around personal information are more critical than ever before as well. And so there really isn't any end in sight. The complexity and what it takes to keep these systems running and keep all of the people who are keeping them running talking to each other is just becoming more and more difficult. And D, let me see if I can get to the next slide here. So,
hello, everyone. Sorry, Stephen, we just got cut off, so we just wanted to tune back in. But I think that you have control, so I will give it back to you.
Thank you. All right. So as I was saying, there are lots of teams now responsible for all these disparate systems, and all too often they're not talking to each other. Even folks on the development side may not be talking to each other across business units and concerns. And it's very typical to find that sales teams and marketing teams, legal teams, the folks who are responsible for compliance, all of those folks feel like they're isolated from the folks that they need to have help them meet their concerns. So how can we bring these folks together, and what can we do to kind of manage the complexity? It's probably something you've heard of. DevOps is becoming more and more popular as a cultural and kind of a set of practices where teams are brought together to work more in a streamlined fashion and more openly, both between developers and operations and more broadly. So let's take a look at how DevOps might fit into this picture with Datadog, Atlassian, and hopefully your systems. First, what is this DevOps thing? In general, there's at the highest levels, we can talk about DevOps in terms of the three ways. If you take time to look through some of the literature that's out there, Initially, we talked about these 3 ways of DevOps, where we concern ourselves with systems thinking, improving feedback, and constant experimentation. These 3 ways were popularized by Gene Kim and a set of authors like Jess Humble, Patrick Dubois, in the book, The Phoenix Project. And I highly recommend that you go and read The Phoenix Project. I think it's a great read. It's a lot of fun, and I think you'll find a lot of similar ideas and familiar ideas in the book. The folks who wrote The Phoenix Project followed up that book a few years later with the DevOps Handbook, which is a much more practical guide to some ideas that you can take advantage of. And they redescribed the 3 ways as the principles of flow, feedback, and continual learning. And these are really great ideas. I have kind of distilled this down to kind of understanding your flow or knowing your flow, controlling that flow, and improving it. So it's kind of important, and this is kind of where Datadog comes in and where Atlassian comes in, to understand what is the connection between what you've deployed, how healthy is it, and what is the value to the customer that those things represent. If you have a particular system and it's solving a problem and it's experiencing certain kinds of health issues, it becomes much more powerful for us to relate priority to fixing those things if we can see them and if we can understand how long it takes to make a change and pull a change through a system. Once we do that, we can start doing things like constraining and not over asking our people and our systems with regard to how much traffic they can handle or what kinds of features they can bring to market and how quickly. And then finally, once we get to the healthy position of being able to see our flow and constrain ourselves to operate that flow in a healthy way, we can take the time to experiment and kind of through the repetition of operating a healthy system, find ways to increase that health and take on new challenges. So DevOps is really everyone's job if you follow that line of thought. It isn't just about developers or the IT ops folks. It's also about the marketing folks and the security compliance folks and the other folks that I mentioned. It's about bringing everyone together. And so why would you want to do that? We've seen that highly performing teams who have adopted DevOps are overachieving. 46 times more frequent deployments than folks who aren't, and faster time to recover from failures. The time it takes, this 430 times shorter lead time. Think about that. If there's a capability or a feature you need to bring to market so that your company can drive the market and stay competitive, being able to deploy that, to bring it to your customers' hands 430 times faster is very important. So let's see how we might bring those things together with Atlassian, Datadog, and some DevOps principles. So on any given Friday, a typical company might be experiencing something like the story I'm about to unfold. Now, luckily, these folks are using Datadog, Atlassian, and DevOps. So you can imagine an incident has occurred. And thanks to Datadog and its constant monitoring, it's spotting outliers, it's spotting anomalies across hundreds or thousands of systems, very disparate stuff. So whether it's your Apache Kafka, queue times are piling up, maybe load averages on a particular server are going nuts, maybe you have a Kubernetes cluster and aggregate resource utilization is not what it was a few minutes ago. These are things that Datadog can collect across all of these disparate concerns and then spot outliers, things that you need to pay attention to. And not only can it spot these things, it can then work hand in glove with JIRA software to create an issue, create a service desk entry, create a work item that not only calls attention to the things that need to be worked on, but also embeds critical information, contextual information about what went wrong right there in the ticket. So as the team is notified, not only are they, seeing these notifications on their handheld devices, mobile, on their watches, where they need to, where they are, how they want to be receiving these notifications, they're also getting that context delivered to them right away. So they're not having to go hunting for what went wrong. They're not having to go chase down SSH credentials to find a log sitting on a server somewhere. Thanks to the integration, they can go directly to the problem as monitored by Datadog. So let's see what that looks like a bit. In a healthy DevOps situation, and by the way, if you're going to start taking on DevOps and Datadog and Atlassian together, a great way to do that is to see how your team performs during incident responses. So in this case, an ideal response would be that the team swarms around the problem. And so thanks to these integrations, they're brought to a JIRA software ticket or a JIRA service desk ticket, perhaps. Perhaps they are creating a wiki page in Confluence so that as more people have to come and go, they can see the context of what has been thought about so far. Almost immediately, we're going to want to use something like status page to notify our customers about what's going on with those systems. If there's some slowness or there's some kind of externally visible impact, we can share that knowledge about the fact that we see that there's an issue and that we're working on it through status page. And then as we find a workaround, in this case, perhaps a system simply needed to be rebooted, or maybe we needed to add some more members to a cluster or adjust some resource allocation, we can let this, through status page, we can let our customers know about that. All the while, Datadog is there through the conversation, not only showing us what went wrong and giving us the opportunity to dig down in a time-correlated way across all of these concerns, but it's also there to help us monitor the changes in the ideas that we're exercising to bring that workaround to life. So we can imagine that the workaround maybe was to add more resources, or maybe the workaround was to roll back a deployment. Often what will happen is there will be some output from this mitigation that leads to a software development fix. Something was deployed that wasn't quite right, and now we want to go and fix that. So this becomes a backlog item for a software developer to tackle. And not only do we want to present that need for the work to the developer, and in that single source of truth, they're used to going to an agile development board or maybe a Scrum board in their existing projects. We want to cross-link that work item back to the problem that occurred. So we have all of this rich contextual history and all of the cross-linking and the hyperlinking, so that software developer, as they begin working on the problem, they're seeing exactly what went wrong. And thanks to, and by the way, so one of the things that we talk about with DevOps is automation. So I haven't said it out loud specifically, but so far we've seen some automation. We've seen how Datadog is automating the concern of monitoring all these systems. Datadog is automating the concern of finding outliers and kind of considering what the information we're collecting means. So that's all sitting there. And then it automated creating the ticket. JIRA automated bringing the people together to talk about the ticket. And then as changes were being applied and a workaround sought, Datadog and JIRA were automating, making sure that the entire team was able to see the results of that effort. So again, here we are in the development mode. Automation to the rescue again. JIRA software with its development panel gives us the ability to hit a button, create a branch, and immediately this developer has a context for the source code to begin working on changes. And as that developer is committing changes, maybe something like Bitbucket pipelines is spinning up a Docker image on the fly that has the Datadog collectors already baked into it. And as every single commit is being pushed into the master repository, say, Bitbucket pipeline is building that software. Datadog is collecting metrics about what was seen, and during the development process, we're seeing what those metrics and what the impacts are, so that that person can be concerned and focused on mitigating whatever we saw in the production. So eventually we get to the point where we want to release that software into production, and again, JIRA plus Datadog to the rescue. Because there was originally an issue, we know which metrics are the ones we want to be keeping an eye on. So when we go to take this new software and push it into production, we can also take the time to pay attention specifically to certain metrics if we want to. It isn't uncommon here at Atlassian, when we work through similar incidents, we discover that we should have been monitoring something we weren't before. We should have been collecting something we weren't before. And so during the process of finding out what went wrong, we often come up with new metrics that we want to make sure Datadog is collecting. So it isn't uncommon for this to lead to a post-mortem. After the software is fixed, after the releases in production, everything has settled. One of the things we talk about in knowing, controlling, and improving flow is the idea of intentionally getting together and doing blameless experimentation. Let's see, what can we be monitoring? What can we be changing? Maybe we shouldn't be using Kafka for a particular situation. Maybe there's maybe we shouldn't be using a particular service provider for our servers, or maybe we need to jump to a different class of hardware. All of these ideas could be chased through a post-mortem exercise. And again, all of that rich information about what went wrong and what triggered this concern is waiting for us just a few clicks away. One of the things that I kind of enjoy about Datadog, by the way, when I kind of drill down into the dashboards, it's hard to see in this picture, but across the top, there's a timeline that shows you how particular monitors have been triggering over time and what their health has been. So it's kind of powerful to see how the ebb and flow of these metrics applies to some concern that we may be focused on. So I've been talking a lot about JIRA. I've mentioned it. It's no secret that most organizations around the world are incredibly familiar with JIRA. A lot of folks use it as a single source of truth for what folks are working on. JIRA scales, from 10 to hundreds, and so it's a popular solution. Datadog does too, of course. But we don't stand alone. JIRA is it's just one tool amid a journey, right? So when we talk about DevOps, it isn't a destination. It's a set of practices that you want to be focused on continuously. And so things like HipChat to kind of make sure real-time communication is occurring, Bamboo for deployments and continuous builds, Bitbucket for holding that critical source code, status page. Those things matter, but they don't stand alone. Atlassian's been around a long time, and we have lots and lots of integrations with the tools that you need. And one of the best ones out there is how we interact with Datadog. Datadog has connectors and integrations into a variety of our products, and again, can work hand in glove to make sure that the folks using the software that they're already familiar with, their end user interface is already familiar with, they're working in those cockpits that they're already familiar with, they're getting all of the context they need from these integrations, and Datadog is key. So what's it like on Friday at your company? Hopefully, if you haven't already, you'll think about taking on the idea of experimenting with Datadog and Atlassian. And maybe you'll see too that there's this tracking and monitoring that happens. Again, Datadog being able to be deployed at various levels, from the bare metal systems into the containerized systems inside of Docker somewhere. It can be monitoring from a Kubernetes standpoint. It can be looking at specific services in a Docker container. It can be looking at the Docker container. It can be looking at the host that's running the clusters and the pods. It can be looking at the health of all of the systems that stand in between. I mean, we could be talking literally about thousands of disparate services that all magically relate together by accident because they're deployed together. And there's a lot of coupling that's hidden there, and something like Datadog can kind of tease that out. And then when stuff does go wrong, how can we very quickly focus on the things that we need to restore service and to maximize value to our customers? How do we stay competitive? How do we reduce the time to fix failures? And then finally, these tools provide centralized repositories where the institution as a whole can go to find out what was the history, what happened, what was decided, what did we do after that, what happened after that, what were the metrics we decided we need to pay attention to after that. With these kinds of tools and capabilities in place, I'm pretty sure your company could be like the one on the one camping out here and spending their Fridays in a much more convenient way. So that's my piece of this. I think we could open up the questions. Obviously, there's a call to action here. We hope that you guys will spend some time looking into Datadog and Atlassian software and how it fits with your systems. I would, again, I can't say enough. I work for Atlassian, but I can't say enough great things about Datadog. There's 200 plus integrations out there. If you have a system, you should be playing with Datadog. I'd urge you to experiment with it and connect it to Atlassian and see how you can start tackling things more quickly. But okay, that's me.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Matt, also for a great discussion. So for those of you on the line, we do have about a couple of minutes left for any questions from the audience. So feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A button on the control bar, and we will address them one at a time. Okay, it looks like we don't have any questions from the audience, but again, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to either Datadog or Atlassian through their Twitter handle. You can see it up on the screen here right now if you do come up with a question later on. And I want to have a big thank you to Stephen and Matt for such a great presentation today. Just as a reminder, the webinar was being recorded and will be made available to you via email within the next few days. So we have come to the conclusion of today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us and have a great rest of your day. What did you want to talk about?